It's nice, isn't it? I don't often go for bright colours, but this I quite like.
I've established myself as a bit of a colourful girl recently. I'm in black today. Obviously, no, I know I'm not a good example, but normally I'm always black, but I have of late, I've gone for the teals and the blues.
Normally you're always in black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a dark, I tend to be blue. I just suddenly realised as I was going through my wardrobe, blue shirt, blue top, blue trousers, blue jeans, everything's blue. I keep buying blue.
Oh.
I need to change up a little bit.
We get stuck in our ways. That's
I'm
what's
blue,
happened.
dabba-dee, da-da-da-da-da-da. Who was it that sang that?
That was, don't tell me, Blue Dabba-Dee.
Kate Bush.
No.
He said, don't tell her.
Oh, Eiffel 65. That was painful.
You bugger.
It's been a while, Mr. Stott. How the devil are you?
Jojo, yeah. It's been a long time since we were face-to-face in the same room. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, actually. I'm just discussing my abandonment, is that the word, of structured life. I am giving up my house and moving into a motorhome in September.
You too. My mate's done exactly the same thing. You know what he's done? He's a builder. Well, he's a joiner to trade, but does loads of work. Anyway, he was living in a flat in Lithgow, bought a bus, right? And it was the ex-team bus of, something like, the England cricket team or something like that. But it was obviously like 20 years old or something. So he's gutted it and put a bed in it and a sitting room and a kitchen and a shower.
Yeah.
This is like a single-decker bus. This is like a big bus. And he's moved out and he's going to live in it.
Marvellous.
He's just going to move in and just live in a bus.
Yeah.
Is that something you would do? Because you've got the Chihuahua to think about.
I do have Willow the Chihuahua, who may make a guest appearance if another DPD delivery man comes to the door. But no, I think I'm too much of a homebody. I enjoy chilling out in the house and
locking the
nice
door.
Hot shower. Yeah.
But, that's interesting.
Where are you going to go on your travels, Jojo?
Well, just because I'm never at home, Grant, so I'm gigging up and down the country, and every time any bills come out of my house, I'm like, I'm never there. So I thought about living in London, but it would be the same problem. So I'm Nottingham, Manchester, Liverpool, I'm just everywhere. So there's no point. And
life on the road.
Yeah, life on the road for a bit. And if I don't like it, I can come back. So,
get a couple of GoPros in there and film it and create an online documentary.
On the go with Jojo.
Yeah, there you go.
Goodness, it's writing itself.
I know. Funnily enough, they mentioned that you have a Chihuahua. We have a big fan in our listening to our podcast. Gowan Calder loves us, but she says we have to announce if people have dogs what kind of a dog they are, so that she can imagine them while she's dog walking.
Well, I think we've just done that.
Yeah, a little black and white Chihuahua, like a little mini collie.
And just one dog.
Just one.
There we go.
There's a full story behind it. Because we had a dog and Charlie passed away, and it was like stepping away from the dog thing. And
Grant, can I just say,
we may or may not get to it, but we inherited Willow.
Can I just say, I'm glad in a way you brought that up, because I remember being in the car the day after Charlie left us, and I think you were still at Forth at the time.
I was. And
you gave something that I don't think I could ever do. It was just a really succinct thing about getting up that morning, him not being, it was a he, wasn't he? Sorry, I wasn't. It's just right. I misgendered someone at the weekend. I've not recovered. More of that in a moment. But you gave a really succinct, you got up, you made your coffee and did all that kind of stuff, and you really held it together. And I would have to say, obviously I've been familiar with your career since you were the face of Cameron Toll shopping centres. But to be honest with you, and I remember saying to Michelle, I'm not really keen on him as a person or professionally, but how you could have done that, I honestly don't know. And I mean that genuinely.
That was the great thing about radio, because, over the years, just by accident, Charlie had become part of the programme, because I would inevitably regale the listeners with the tales of what he got up to. That was the brilliant thing about dogs, because they inevitably get up to stuff and they inevitably surprise you and make you laugh. And so I'm like, I'm going to tell that story tomorrow. And and that was it. So I just felt it was right, because it was quite sudden when he died. None of us were prepared. He hadn't been ill. It was just literally one morning we woke up. He's not looking great. Went to the vets, and within 24 hours he was gone. Yeah. So it was that thing. Right, I need to need to share that. And that was what was great about radio. And what is great about radio, you can take the listen. And I love just when, you said, I remember that moment, I remember that day. Yeah. And obviously I remember that day too, but I get that quite a bit. People say, I remember one morning you did this and you said that, and I just stopped the car and I was having and it's that's just that intimacy that you can get on the radio and, podcasts like this, I guess, as well. Mm. Are we recording, by the way? Is this?
Yes.
Have we started?
Yeah, we just start.
It's all very natural. We're not like you with your shock jock tactics. The poor man's Janice Forsyth coming out with some nonsense about rebus. No one's interested in that pish, frankly. Honestly, and you can keep your panto active. The poor man's Janice Forsyth.
You don't know how funny that is.
Honest to goodness. I mean, really, I don't know. Am I speaking to you? Am I speaking to Des Clark? But both overexposed.
That's funny as well.
It's often the funniest people that don't have the main exposure.
Box office poison.
Box office poison.
No, we do. We just jump in, Grant. We just.
We have no option.
We're mid conversation all the time with people. So
we have no option.
We hope you don't mind if you would like us to start recording and do it again.
No, just so I know. I wasn't sure if if I'd peaked already.
No.
I think you're probably about 7.5 years. And that's being generous, love. I've seen you in panto, phoning it in. How is the money for that?
Not as much as you think, let me tell you.
Bloody crossroads.
Actually, I have heard that. I've always assumed that panto was, hundreds of thousands, but it isn't.
It can be if you're Don Fringe.
It can be if you're at the right level. Yeah. I'm clearly not. But no, certainly for certain big earners in certain big shows, the money is absolutely off the scale. But, for your sort of year in, year out, pluggers away like me. And don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely not complaining. But
sounds like it. Recast. Some people are actually grateful for work, but never mind.
But then,
hello, Des. Are you doing anything? Oh, sorry, Des is already there.
But because panto is such, you are a fixture of panto in Scotland. How was it then for the last couple of years when you weren't able to do it? That must have felt weird for that time of year.
It's been a roller coaster. I mean, that first year that we didn't do panto, we were just all kind of stuck at home and didn't really know what to do. I did my first panto in 1993, and with the exception of 1999, I've done panto every single year, and that's pretty much the entire life of my kids. At Christmas time, Dad buggers off and goes to the theatre, so they didn't know what it's like to have me around.
What to do with you?
What to do with me? And I'm like, Christmas, that kind of that's something that happens in the house that I have no part in. Claire does it all, and all that gets all set up. So it was bizarre, but I was, compared to that one year I had out in 1999, I wasn't, everybody was off. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like, I've not got any work this year. It wasn't one of those. So it was weird being around at Christmas time, but it was a weird Christmas anyway. Yeah. So it was just, everything was nuts. So.
And my timeline might be a bit off here, and I might be being a bit insensitive, but did that coincide with the passing of Andy Gray?
Yeah, he had gone down to Milton Keynes.
Why?
Came back because the theatre had closed literally before they did their dress rehearsal, I think. And he came back, tested positive a couple of days later. So he was, by the time Christmas Day came round that year, he had full blown COVID, so it wasn't great. But sent a message around everybody in Christmas morning with a glass of Prosecco, and then took to his bed and was in hospital 2 days later, and got into intensive care just as the new year started, and that sadly was it. He died a couple of weeks later.
And I mean, the passing of Andy Gray was a huge thing for Scottish theatre, and but also the loss for panto as well.
Massive loss for panto, and what was nice about the panto that we did do this year past, because we knew this was our first Christmas back since COVID. It was our first or our last show at the King's before they were closing for the redevelopment. but fundamentally and most importantly, I think for everyone, it was our first show without Andy.
Yeah.
Now we'd done panto without him, Beauty and the Beast, a couple of years before when he was going through his cancer battle. He came back to do Goldilocks and the Three Bears when he recovered, and then the following year was as discussed. So this was us back, and it was our first one without him. So we knew we had to do something. We knew we had to mark it, and not just for us, but for the audience as well, because as you mentioned, he was such a massive part of what the show had become in Edinburgh, and to so many people, and so, that he was as big a part of the Christmas as Santa, almost, because he was so, such a big part of the show. So we knew we had to do something for him in the show, but at the end of the day, it's a panto. People are there to enjoy themselves and have a good time. So how do you get that mix? How do you get that moment? And we, Alan, myself, and Ed Curtis, who's the sort of director and writer, the three of us deliberated long and hard, and Ed came up with a lovely idea. I came back and we sort of tweaked it a little bit, and then we worked it again a little bit on the floor. But the magic bit was out of what's normally the villain's demise, right, is when I get, banished or made good or whatever. Was this little twist where I said, I'm evil through and through, and nothing and no one's going to convince me that this needs a happy ending. And I know what you're thinking, Bruce. And, and we talked about that. And
how dare you? I never enjoyed it. I want my money back.
Deliberated on the floor as well. And then Alan would step forward and says, I know someone, King Andy. And then at the moment, the audience just realised what was happening. And this was, it's towards the end of the show, so it was a lovely moment to do it. And then I would go, you've got me there, to King Andy. And everybody knew who we were talking about at that moment, right? And the fact that we put King made him a panto character and put him and immortalised him in the world of panto that we were in. And it happened on the first night, which we weren't expecting, but the audience just applauded, rose, cheered. And this happened every single night we had that moment. And then we would step forward and sing this lovely song, and then a gauze came in behind us, and this image of Andy just came up. And the way it was placed was Claire, his daughter, who's joined us in the panto. Ed had staged it, so she was kind of standing in one position, and Andy was right over her shoulder. And toughest thing, but the loveliest thing I've had to do in all the years that we've put the panto on. And the gutting thing was that we had to close on Christmas Eve. Yeah. So there's like 3 weeks worth of audience that never got to see that moment.
Yeah. And is that something you're going to replicate this year? Are you going to try and do something, or do you feel the moment?
No, I mean, Andy will
always past as well.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's Andy. Andy will always be part of us. Yeah. And Andy will, and the fact that Claire's on the show with us now. But I mean, Andy himself would go, "Oh no, it's done. Oh no, it's done. We're not doing that again." He would celebrate life, absolutely. But he wouldn't dwell on, anything like this. So we're conscious that we don't want to overdo it.
And
but we want
something,
to do it. Yeah, we want to do it right. So the way that we've worked things for Andy is quite lovely, actually, because we've given him, we placed him in the show at the Panto. And then shortly after that, there was a lovely episode that the guys at River City did for him. Which I was in as well, which was really nice. And then on Alan's show that we did in March, Alan and I just stood up and did 15 minutes about Andy with clips, and we did this lovely thing because Andy, and this we talked about this at Panto. I says, let's not, worry about the second half. This was always variety show. I says, let's you and I just get up. And I says, look at our phones. Our phones are packed with messages and photographs and videos from Andy. So why not celebrate and sell the funny stuff, the personal stuff that the audience might not have seen before? Because the variety show audience is pretty much our panto audience, so they'll appreciate that as well. So we put together this lovely little routine. We've got the big screen in, photographs, little video clips of our wind ups behind the stage and messages that we sent to each other. We finished with this lovely moment. Andy had sent a video on WhatsApp singing Gilly Gilly Ossenpfeffer, Katzenellenbogen by the Sea, which was one of his favourite little songs, right? There's a tiny house by a tiny stream where a lovely lad had a lovely dream. And he'd set it to the video. So Alan then came up with this idea, sent it to Pix, who's our MD, who then scored it. I mean, it was just, he just did it on video, but Pix managed to write a musical score to this video clip. And then the orchestra, the band on stage, played live while Andy was singing on the screen. And it was one of these special moments. And it just it gave us a chance to give him one last bow at the Kings.
Give him his moment.
And it was like, you know, let's do this for Andy. Let's let him have his final, you know, moment in front of the audience at the King's Theatre. And again, it's the whole thing you can only really do in theatre, and it's a really bizarre thing, you know, with an audience, and it's the magic of it. And I don't know why it works, how it works, but there's just some things like that.
And it's that
really
emotional connection, isn't it? And also, audiences do love getting a peek behind the curtain and seeing. And we
gave them the Andy Graney's pants as a sight to behold, let me tell you.
Oh, that is lovely.
But I still miss him, and every single day, and this is what I've learned about grief is there is all of a sudden a big hole in your life, and when it first happens, you deal with it and you get on with it, and it's very upset, and everybody's upset with you, and that's absolutely right, and that's natural what happens. But then life does sort of return to a sort of semi-normal, but then all of a sudden you realise that there's something missing, and it took me possibly even a year to, you know, I knew I was kind of out of sync a wee bit, and it was because he's not there, and it's because I miss his messages, and I miss his text, and I miss him being there. You know, when River City came up, the first person I wanted to speak to and tell was Andy.
Yeah, I did that for years with my mum and various people. You know, when something happens, you immediately reach for the phone, and I still do it sometimes with people that have passed and go, "Oh, I must tell Chris." Oh. Yeah.
But that's what I think they say about grief. It's about the fact that your love for the person or the pet or whatever doesn't go away.
No.
It's just finding a way of redirecting that. That becomes your kind of compartmentalization, or to a degree acceptance, or just dealing with it a bit better.
But I also think it's quite interesting in terms of grief, actually, that it's the most powerful emotion that none of us escape from, you know, having it, but yet we try to, we don't talk about it. We try to put ourselves into denial that people that we love will die. And secondly, we try to protect ourselves, you know, by not getting hurt by other things. But I think we need that training in getting our emotions hurt in order to deal with the power of grief, because it is so powerful.
It is. And it's the little tiny things. I have you know, it kind of struck me as I was crossing the road after after being a poor man's Janice Forsyth one afternoon. Because
come on, Jinty, use your words.
Because Andy loved the afternoon show, because he loves his movies. He loved his music and plays and things in the theatre. So he was always dipping in to see what I was doing. And inevitably there would be a message, or inevitably there would be something on my phone as I was crossing the road at Holyrood to head back to my car. And I miss those moments, you know, as well. It's like, it's a bit of feedback about the show, because he would really tell me what he thought, and he would, you know, have a little, you know, thing to say about an interview or a film that I'd been talking about or whatever, you know. So yeah, it's ongoing. That's what I've learned. It's an ongoing process.
But I think laughter, I mean, I think we all agree with that even sometimes the darkest moments, the laughter that can come out of that is part of the survival of it, or the recovery.
Talking of grief, your acting career still continues. And it's funny that you mentioned River City.
Seamless, Bruce. Seamless.
No, it's like I'm a professional. I'd read recently that the guy who had written River City, it was primarily set in Leith. It was, and then they'd moved it to Glasgow, to Shieldown, where I believe there is no water running through it, which I thought, that's nice. Do you think, how different do you think the show would have been had it have been set in Leith?
Oh, I think it would have been completely different. I mean, because it is, you know, River City is firmly rooted in the west coast of Scotland. So with that, there's the accents. With that, there's even the look of the tenement buildings on the set. And yeah, it would have had a completely different feel, I'm sure, if it was set through in Leith. Although, you know, where would it have been filmed? It would have been filmed in Edinburgh on a set like that. I don't know. But yeah, it definitely had a sort of real different feel to it. And it would have been interesting. I didn't know that until I read that interview as well with Stephen. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting, actually. Yeah, it would have given it a completely different... Same if you'd relocated it to anywhere. If it was set in Aberdeen, if it was set in Dundee, Perth, you know...
If it was set in Dundee, the set would have been stolen. I mean, let's be honest. It would have been stolen, put on bricks and sold for parts. I can say that because I'm from there. Can I ask, because you're an Edinburgh boy, and so much of what is televised or radio or whatever comes out of Glasgow, and we've kind of discussed this on the show before. Why do you think there isn't an impetus in which to do greater representation of Dundee, Aberdeen, the Highlands, you know, Inverness? It all seems to be very West Coast.
I get that even as an Edinburgh person. You know, I've been in this business for over 30 years, and you can be doing stuff in Edinburgh, and it never gets. It never gets a fraction of the attention if something similar was happening in Glasgow. All of a sudden, you know. And I've got to be careful what I say here, but you know, for years everyone used to say, Glasgow's the place for panto, for example. It's like, no, we've got a great running show through here, thank you very much, you know, and there's a great panto in Aberdeen that's been, you know, packing them in for years. But it's just because, and I think, and it's taken me, you know, this time, but all the media stuff is through there, you know. STV's ensconced through there. The BBC's pretty much ensconced through there. Obviously, we've got studios and things in Edinburgh, but not to the degree they have there. So if people are looking for stories, if people are looking for talent, and people are looking for anything, they'll just kind of look out their own window. And I think that's kind of what it's been. I remember I worked, when I worked for the BBC Education Department, and we were making kids' TV programs for primary 4s and 5s. And the producer came and says, right, we've got this new series coming up, and it's going to be about, you know, geography or whatever it is. And we're going to be filming it in Dundee. And I was like, what? Why are we going to Dundee? And she goes, because we never go to Dundee. You know, we never go outside of the Central Belt. And so we're going to deliberately take this up to Dundee and look around the Tay and look around, you know, Perth and all the areas around it. And it was, and I remember that back that would have been in the sort of early to mid 90s, and there was that sort of feeling then, and I still I think it's improved slightly, but yeah, I absolutely see your point.
It is similar. It's, you know, when we talk about London, everything being London centric, it does tend to be Glasgow centric in Scotland, and there's been made moves in England to take things to Manchester, Media City, all that kind of stuff. And
but I think not here.
But not as I mean, it does need a shift. I think
even that thing that Martin Compson, I can never know how to pronounce his name. What was the thing he was in Dundee? Janie was in
Guilt.
No.
Was it Guilt?
No. It was set at Dundee University. Do you know
Traces.
What? Traces, yes.
Traces.
And although Dundee was meant to be, you know, so little of it. Oh, sorry.
That was my watch.
Are you busy?
No, it just was something.
Is it another corporate coming through? Because I'll take that up with Kenny Donaldson as well. I only got you on to actually shout at you. So this is all just padding. I actually deeply resent you. But the funny...
Yin and yang, Jojo loves me and Bruce just wants to...
And yet as a threesome we all work. Lube up, love.
I adore you, Grant.
And I you, Jojo.
And so does Bruce.
Oh, do you know what I hate? People that are false. She adores every one of its suits. What was I going to say? Yeah, so going back to Traces, although it was meant to be in Dundee, so much wasn't filmed in Dundee. And it's like either do or die. Like, don't... You know, come on. If Lorraine Kelly can live in Dundee, man, it ain't that bad.
Yeah.
Tober up, people.
I think it will get better. I think it is getting better with regards to, you know, you look at it wasn't that long ago that Scotland hardly had a film studio that we could use. Now, all of a sudden, there's a big one in Glasgow, Kelvin Grove, I think that's up and running.
There's a shed in Leith with a camera in it.
Shed in Leith. That's packed. They've got some, and I mean, Martin Compson just finished a series in there about the rig. So there's stuff coming and utilising all the different cities that Scotland has, and it's stunning. I mean, it's long overdue. But
there has been talk for years and years and years, near to where I live in South Queensferry. There's this whole sort of area that they were talking about making some massive great big film studio, and they've talked about it and it's never materialised.
And they were going to up at the Pentlands as well, and that never happened. And they were going to bring back Acorn Antiques, and that never happened. So sometimes you just have to move on with your life, really, don't you? Do you think it is a wee bit depressing for people who are names in inverted commas have to go elsewhere? I mean, I know that people can launch themselves in Scotland, but without maybe a London credit or an American credit, they wouldn't have the profile that they would have coming from here, if you see what I mean. I remember speaking to someone that worked at Radio Scotland, and they said, oh yeah, we only book people that are on Radio 4 because we feel as though that they have the profile or whatever that they're looking for.
It is an interesting one. Again, I think we're in different times now. I think it has changed. I mean, again, an example of that was when I was doing Fully Booked in the 90s, and we would have Zoe, they would fly up from London the weekend to come and do the show from the studios in Glasgow. And it was that whole thing of you don't have to be based in London to do London gigs. You don't have to be based. You can literally get anywhere now quickly. And that's what they do. And I know that at PQ, there's a lot of kids programs are still getting made there, and presenters are getting flown up from Manchester. Shows that starting in Manchester are happening from PQ now. But I think, and obviously, what's happened now with technology, with
because we've all learned how to use Zoom.
Contributors, you can be on the show from Timbuktu, and you can still take part in the program. So I think the world has become a smaller place from that point of view. But there was definitely a time. And I can see why you say that. And I felt that as well. But I think we are now in a place where people are, and it's just getting seen a lot of the time. It's just getting seen. And as I mentioned earlier on about the west, east, rest of Scotland, if you're in Glasgow, you've got a better chance of being seen than you perhaps are if you're in Edinburgh or up in Aberdeen or Perth or whatever. It's same as London. You've got a better chance if you're there, if you're in the city, and you get to meet these people and get put in front of them.
What would you do if you weren't doing what you are doing? Because you have had a very long career and a very illustrious career, and you've done all mediums of broadcast. You've done, live stuff, film, TV, whatever. What would you do if you weren't doing that?
I don't know. I mean, I am really, I really realize how lucky I have been, and how I've always found, I think it's a self-employed mentality. You'll both probably get this, is you cannot rest on your laurels on one particular thing. Because I've always just likened it to spinning plates. It's like I've got the radio on the go, but then I also get panto at Christmas, and I do some sort of corporates, and I'll also be doing a wee bit of that. Oh, I'm going to try that. And it's all that, it's that fear of all the plates falling down and you having nothing. So I've never not done anything because I was too scared. I've always tried things. I'm much happier trying something down on my arse and going, that's not for me. But you never know, it might happen. And more often than not, I've been very fortunate that things have worked out. Be it starting in radio, find yourself in children's television, get yourself on stage. That opened the door to working in panto. Then I got in panto and went, right, I grabbed that opportunity. And that's in any aspect of this job. And I used to say it to kids who used to come in the studio and say, how'd you get into radio? The most difficult part of getting anywhere in this business, I think, be it radio, be it television, be it theatre to a certain extent, is getting your foot in the door. Is getting that first break to get you from being outside in. And it's, with radio, it was come in and answer the phones and make tea and then learn how to drive a desk. And then you'll start TOing a show. And then somebody will be off and it'll be like, can you cover this afternoon? And then you go on air and all of a sudden you get your moment.
That was what Lorraine Kelly said, wasn't it? That she was covering for somebody and then just that it continued. But you say about luck. You say about luck. And we all know that. There's a lot of luck to be had in the business.
No, you have to have ability. You have to have talent.
Yeah, but you don't sustain a career. Because I always think it's really interesting when people who are really successful, I was really lucky. Maybe at some points, but not to sustain something.
The way that I look at it is you're possibly then lucky to get yourself in the room, but you have to keep yourself in the room. And that is by virtue of your ability and, tenacity and also in many cases, good manners and a good attitude.
Yeah. Definitely, and don't be an arsehole.
That's rich coming from you.
Sorry? It's just sometimes like a word salad coming from her, because you were just saying that, but again, she just likes to tramp on the laugh, as my friend would say. He said, don't be an arsehole, and I'm going to fling that back open to you, because you really are a grade A one. This is a woman that extinguishes cigarettes in her coat pocket, but more of that later. This is what I'm dealing with.
You're lucky.
Someone from the jute mills of Dundee.
But you're right. You're right. You know, be nice and be the kind of person that people want to work with.
Yeah.
And as much as it is about getting in there and being able to do the job in hand, and what I meant by being lucky was because I know that there are many other people that can do what I do. There are many other people that can get behind a microphone. Many other people that are better qualified to get on stage at Panto. Many other people can do this, do that, all of the sort of facets of my career. However, you know, you've just got to make it work and respect the job that you're doing and respect the people that you're working around and just don't be an arsehole. And it's, it's surprising.
Yeah, well, it's surprising how many arseholes there are just wandering around at large, not naming names. Yeah. There she is. Who is the biggest a-hole that you've worked with, Janice? Who's the biggest? Who is, like, have you ever done an interview and you just thought, really, I wish nothing but harm on you, you've been difficult, you've been late, or it's maybe someone that, because I would imagine, I've done Panto once with John, do you know a guy, John Hannibal? He does all the voiceovers for STV.
I know John from STV.
Yeah.
We did Weems Bay together. He was the voice of Wild Thing, this massive animatronic puppet. John's brilliant.
Well, we hated each other at the audition, and I absolutely despised each other. And the laugh was, we were ugly sisters, right? And I remember on day one, and he just looked at me and I looked at him and I went, look, I'm not thrilled I'm with you. And he went, well, it's reciprocal. And I kid you not, see, after 3 months in Motherwell, I mean, that is like, you know, Bosnia That's on acid. Anyway. And we have remained great friends, but we worked with some people in that, and quite frankly, like, if I saw them and there were no speed cameras, I'd speed up and put them out of the world's misery, because they were twats.
I'm trying to think now. I'm going to go into the Panto archive. It was in Motherwell with Bruce Devlin and John Hannibal.
2008, Cinderella. 2008. Spillers Pantos.
It is hard because there's all people that we don't necessarily like working with, but we can't. We can be honest, but we can't be that honest because we've got career limiting honesty. That's our problem half the time.
Well, that's very true. But being in the hothouse that is Panto, like, a lot of people were like, Bruce, you'll love being in Panto because you're in a dress from 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I'm not a drag queen. This really isn't my thing. Particularly as well because in the, you know, at 9 o'clock in the morning, you've got the school kids, and then in the afternoon you have, shall we just say, the great unwashed, and then in the evening you've got the families, and it's a long day. It's tough work. It really, really is.
3
difficult.
show days.
Oh my God.
We've never done them in Edinburgh. We've never done them, and we've, you know, Alan in particular has fought against doing the 3 show day thing because I don't think anybody benefits, because I don't think the audience would get a great show because you're all confused. You don't know where you are. You're not on the balls of your feet.
Oh, we did, but then we were professionals. But, you know, I mean, it's not for everyone.
But it is. But it's the same as...
End scene.
It's the same as stand-up. If you do 2 or 3 shows or 4 shows, like, just by the end of it, you don't know what your bloody name is. But that's an interesting thing when you were saying, because I disagreed with you. Do you remember backstage at the stand when you tried stand-up and you were like, I don't want to do this and I never want to do it again and I'm absolutely dreadful.
Yes. But Jojo said it hasn't held me back. Stick in.
But I disagreed with you entirely. You were a natural storyteller on stage.
You were lovely. And I think it's very different. And when I did what that led to was my show at the Fringe, Tales from Behind the Mic, which is quite possibly one of the things I'm most proud of doing, because it was really mine. It was something that, it was all my material. I pretty much wrote it myself, and were it not for Karen Corrin kicking my backside and putting me on that room, it would probably have never seen the light of day. But it was the most satisfying and rewarding, one of the most satisfying and rewarding projects I've ever been involved in. And again, it only came about by fluke, by chance. Andy and I had been working at the Fringe before that. We'd done a couple of years doing plays, and then he got cast in River City. Dates clashed, and he said, look, not going to be able to do the Fringe this year. And I said, look, I'm fine with that. I'll just take the year out. and it'll all be hunky-dory. Karen Corrin phones up. She goes, Andy just tells me you're not doing the River City, you're not doing the Fringe this year. I'm like, that's right, he's doing River City. She goes, well, that leaves you to do something on your own then. And I'm like, I don't know what you're going to do, that show where you tell all those funny stories about being on the radio. I'm like, oh, Karen, no, I can't. And
she put you in the brochure, brilliant.
She kicked my arse, got me on the stage. But the one thing I will say is I never ever viewed myself as a stand-up comedian, and that is I talk about, I would never not do anything because I was too scared. I would never do a stand-up set because I am absolutely shitting a brick about it. I would never expose myself like that. I could never ever step out with only a microphone stand for protection. Whereas with Tales from Behind the Mic, it was pretty much scripted and thought out. It was a show. It was there was a narrative. I knew exactly what I was saying. I'd learnt my lines. Mm-hmm. Whereas stand up, as you guys know, is a completely different world. So I never ever viewed that as a stand up show, but it was as near as damn it as I ever got to. I loved it.
Well, and as well, talking of Edinburgh, what are you doing? Are you doing anything this year?
No, we'll be back filming River City at the end of June, so that takes me out of the equation. However, we do have, again, it's going back to Andy, but we Andy and I were working on a play, because every year we went to the Fringe, to try and find a play for two guys of a certain age. Mm-hmm. It's not easy, right? There's not a wealth of material out there. So we often had to get stuff written for ourselves. So Ian Patterson wrote us something. We got a play from Phil Differ, and we started thinking about, once Andy was going through his cancer situation, I said, you got to start writing down all these funny moments that happen with what you're going through. So anyway, so we started doing that, and he says, there's a play in this. There's a play in this journey that I'm on. And so we decided to make this our return to the Fringe. This was going to be our project. We brought in Alan McHugh, who's a writer, and Andy and him particularly worked very closely and created a script, and we worked on it over lockdown like this. We did it across Zoom. We did a couple of readings. Alan went away and did rewrites, and the plan was that we would come back to the Fringe and do this play, and we had a title that Andy's partner Tamara came up with called Chemo Savvy.
Oh, brilliant.
And it was about these two brothers who become estranged. And Andy was keen to say, it's based on my experiences, but not my story. So it's two brothers who became estranged, had fallen out over the death of their mother many years before, come back together because one had been diagnosed with cancer and the other could have been a blood donor. But the other one was going to be playing all the multi-characters. So this is where the comedy element was going to come in. So it was pretty good, Nick, and we were quite far down the line when sadly we lost Andy. So I ended up speaking to Alan McHugh, because we have this play, and Andy felt so passionately about it. It was very much his, passion project. I feel we should still do this. Mm-hmm. So the plan is we're going to recast it, and we're going to put it on next year at the Fringe, and I'll kind of help produce it, but leave it. So
you won't be in it.
No,
that would be too hard, wouldn't it?
That would be too hard. It would be all out of sync. Yeah. And I think what it needs is sort of fresh, two fresh performances from two. And the one thing that we've all agreed on, and this is including Claire, Andy's daughter, and Tamara, is that whoever comes to the project has to be a mate of Andy's and has to get what this is all about and get why this is going to be a special run. So Karen we were originally going to do it this year, but we weren't ready. The script needed rewritten and certain bits, so we've delayed it a year. So we're going to do it next year, and that'll be ours and Karen's and the festival's big tribute to Andy. We'll do a big gala night for him as well during the run. So that'll be our project next year.
A book? Are you thinking about writing a book?
I would love to write a book. I would love to just have a book on the table with my name on the spine, just having written Grant Stott. There's a guy in America called Grant Stott who's written a couple of books. Yeah, I know. He's a writer. And I've always fancied just ordering his books and just leave them around, leave them lying around the house. Yes, that was my deep dive into the history of the Antarctic that I did back in 1978. But no, I would love to write a book, but I don't know what it would be about. I don't know how I would do it. And I don't know when I would. I think I've got this idea. I'd be like James Caan in Misery. I think the only way I could go and write a book is just to take off to the hills with my typewriter, my bottle of Dom Perignon, and my one cigarette when I'm finished.
I am always impressed by the amount of people that do find the time to write a book. The amount of people that wrote a book in lockdown, I was really annoyed.
Were you?
Yeah.
You were quite annoyed in lockdown. But we'll move on. I more see you penning a pamphlet in Seaton Sands.
Yes.
You know, in the caravan with a bottle of Strongbow.
I've played caravan parks before, don't you know?
Oh, so have I, but not for reasons of entertainment. I was on the fondue committee.
You are incorrigible, Devlin. So you are. Oh, thank you so much, Grant. An absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on our bloody daft podcast.
Well, not that he's taken it seriously. He's been more interested in his wrist, frankly.
No, because it keeps shouting out.
It keeps shouting out. There's more money in your account, right? I really hope you're exposed for the fraud you are one day.
Have you not taken my role very seriously? I've got microphones to buy, don't you know?
Oh, I've got to investigate one because I ordered a microphone from Amazon, but it's not turned up. It was the same with a ring light, but it wasn't for that ring.
Is Amazon taking it?
But that's Wish for you. Can't have what you want.
And Amazon's taken against you as well.
Yes, exactly.
The whole world's against you, Bruce.
Grant, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. So lovely to be on. Hope I didn't bore you too much.
No, not at all.
I'm fine. I'm going to have a coffee, but thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Grant. That was great.
Thank you guys.